and click. Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. It's great to see that there's actually people that are willing to listen to talks at 7 p.m. At this heat instead of drinking beer. So to bribe you a little bit to stay until the end, I got some swag, but only for you guys. Like nobody else gets it. So I got some T-shirts. These T-shirts, if you like them, I think they look pretty cool. So a bunch of other things. All right. So I have 20 minutes, right? I have also a short demo, so I'll try to be quick, and I won't go too technical. To quickly introduce myself, I'm Branimir, or people know me as Brana. I'm one of the founders and the CTO behind Trace Labs. We are core developers of OriginTrail, and we built something quite unique in the crypto world. It's called a Decentralized Knowledge Graph. It's actually a thing we invented, only now we're getting sort of competitors, which are many years late behind us, I would say. But the topic of the talk today is actually how to use the decentralized knowledge graph, and not so much what it's about. I talked about that many times before, also last Decoded. So if you're interested in like the in-depth tech, maybe it's best if you approach me later. I can tell you all about it. Or you can go to our website and find out all kinds of stuff over there. What I'll be talking about is one use case of what you can do with the decentralized knowledge graph. But first, let me start. By a raise of hand, who here knows about knowledge graphs? Did anybody ever hear about knowledge? OK, couple of hands, nice. Usually people don't, which makes sense because it's not like such a big thing in Web3. It's generally not such a big thing. It's a big thing in Web2, actually. Companies such as Google, Netflix, pretty much all of them, Uber, they all use knowledge graphs. And somebody killed my presentation. So whatever happened there, just a second. OK, I guess maybe it's my computer. Let's turn on amphetamine. You guys know amphetamine, right? OK, indefinitely. All right, so like I said, I'll be talking about one use case, which is AI-powered semantic search. And why it's AI-powered and why does this at all make sense, I'll try to explain through the next couple of slides. But like I said, I'll try to keep it not too technical because it's kind of a mix of three complex technologies, essentially knowledge graphs, the decentralized knowledge graph, Polkadot, the blockchain, and AI. So OK, without further ado, is this going to work? I guess it's going to work. OK. So probably you heard of this guy. His name is Geoffrey Hinton. He actually recently, a couple of months ago, left Google. He's considered the godfather of AI, and basically he's raised concerns that AI can be quite a troubling thing for us. He basically was the guy behind this new branch of AI that we're seeing now explode, which is the neural branch. And previously, actually, this is not the only branch. Like the older branch is called symbolic branch. So symbolic is actually this older, sort of more defined way to represent knowledge and, in a way, intelligence, do inferences and all kinds of cool things, which in a way embodied itself in something called knowledge graphs. Maybe you've heard of this idea of semantic web before. I heard the name Tim Berners-Lee mentioned a couple of times today. The guy basically invented this concept of interconnected knowledge or data, which was back in the day called semantic web. By the way, also the first time they mentioned Web 3.0 was kind of a label for this. But that's quite long ago. The good thing about it is a lot of technology has been developed. And so there's these two branches, right? The problem is we're starting to get a lot of trouble from AI. And this is not just said by Geoffrey Hinton. You've probably seen something like this if you were on Twitter the last couple of months, I would say. Lawyers, people are using ChatGPT, and they're essentially making mistakes because the neural systems have this bad property of being able to hallucinate. So in a world that is already rich with misinformation, propaganda, fake news, all kinds of things, now we get AI to take all of that data and just create new content, which is even more questionable because it's able to hallucinate. This is the case where a certain lawyer used ChatGPT, probably because he was in a rush. I don't think there was a bad intention, but what happened is he ended up quoting something that doesn't exist. And yeah, you can imagine what kind of trouble that gets him in. So that's a really big problem. The misinformation is all over, and if we get AI to boost it, then we're going to be in a really bad place. So essentially, in an overflow of misinformation, trusted data is what really brings us security and prosperity. That's the only, but that's, I really like the Gavin's talk at the beginning of the day, which really highlighted this specific problem. So essentially, we can look at the kind of the whole history of how this was going in sort of, let's say, 3 groups. We had essentially 3 knowledge revolutions. The first knowledge revolution was back in the day, printing press. So it solved the problem of knowledge scarcity. Basically, you had churches and basically a few places in the world that actually had some sort of documented knowledge. They were the gatekeepers to knowledge, and things were, copied by hand. So all of a sudden, we get this replication machine that solves the problem of scarcity, and it creates a revolution in the entire world. Basically, we get a renaissance, and all of a sudden knowledge can be dispersed around. The second knowledge revolution is what we're living still right now, which is this revolution that was basically taking all that fragmented knowledge, solving that problem by connectivity, the web in general, both in physical sense, like connections of machines, but also connections of data, like I said, Web 1, Web 2, and so on. And it really used this notion of connectivity to solve this fragmentation problem. And right now we're in this problem where all of a sudden we have like enormous generation of content. Very soon we will have more content generated by AI than content that was written by humans. And that point is going to happen relatively soon. So the big problem now is trust, obviously. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. And if AI is going to generate all of these problems, we naturally need some form of decentralized AI. And of course, we're not going to build that by inventing something incredibly new. We've been working on decentralized technology for a very long time. So that's something that we definitely leverage. So I'll show you today how we can use OriginTrail to do that. Just as a note, OriginTrail is a protocol that has quite a bit of history. It's been launched in 2018, actually, on Ethereum. It's a multi-chain decentralized knowledge graph, so it has spanned across multiple blockchains. And recently, a year ago, actually, we have launched a dedicated OriginTrail Parachain on Polkadot, which is tailored for all kinds of knowledge operations and basically for the decentralized knowledge graph. Like I said, the technicals, if you're interested, I can jump into that. I would really like to after the talk, so feel free to approach me. So essentially, it's this 2-layer structure. We have blockchains and we have the decentralized knowledge graph. And the blockchains are used for several things I'll explain now and what the graph is all about. So essentially, what I'm here to claim is that knowledge is actually a new asset class. And with OriginTrail, you can go ahead and seize it, right? So what does this mean? What is a new type of asset? It's actually called a knowledge asset in OriginTrail. So an OriginTrail knowledge asset has a couple of properties. Basically, it's ownable. If I were to sort of numb it down completely, I could call it knowledge NFTs or NFTs for knowledge. Essentially, like I said, it lives on 2 layers. So one of the layers is blockchain. That means whenever you create a knowledge asset, and anybody can create a knowledge asset on OriginTrail, it mints an NFT under the hood to represent that ownership. It also gives you the capability to manage this knowledge. So you can, for example, update this knowledge asset. So essentially, it's built on standardized approach. So it's currently ERC 721, but it's not limited to that. So the idea is that we expand the ability for knowledge assets to be minted with any type of NFT. But the key innovation here being that it's combined across 2 different networks. So ownership described on blockchain. Then discoverability, which is what we'll see in a bit. Actually, knowledge assets have a unique new identifier, which is an extension of the URL scheme. It's completely based on W3C standards, and it's called a UAL, Uniform Asset Locator. And actually, it's a combination of a DID and the knowledge graph identifier. So if you have a UAL, I'll show you in a moment on a demo, you can actually self-resolve it. So you don't need to trust any sort of DNS or something like that. You can basically, directly from the identifier, you can see which chain it's on, which contract it's minted in, and what is the actual identifier in the knowledge graph. Then you're also able to verify it. This is where the knowledge graph part comes in. So all of this knowledge, which is represented in this graph form, you can see here, obviously you have a verifiable trail of information on the blockchain, such as ownership change of the NFT or creation time update, whatever happened with it. Basically, it's kind of like your Git repo, you know, basically a sequence of commits, what was going on with it. But also you can verify basically the integrity of this graph or any piece of that graph. The actual graph state or the identifier of the state, this hash, is actually the Merkle root of the graph. So basically I could send to some contract, I could say, hey, this particular element here is in the graph, I can construct a Merkle proof and I can submit it to contract. So in a way, it's kind of like an oracle. If you would like to use a knowledge asset, you can use its content or some statement from a knowledge asset inside of a contract, or you can just query it from the outside. So you would get this information from the DKG. The data is on the DKG, and you would be able to recompute the Merkle tree to compare that it's indeed exactly the same as it's been timestamped on the blockchain. But apart from all of this, the cool stuff about knowledge graphs, as I started at the beginning, is that they represent this symbolic branch of AI. And that means we get a lot of cool things such as semantics. And semantics are really cool if you want to go into AI. So basically, it's an AI-ready knowledge. What does that mean? In technical sense, we can go very deep. But if you ever done anything with knowledge graphs, that is basically a standardized representation of something called triples or statements, subject, predicate, object statements, which provide semantics, which also utilize, ideally, if you create knowledge assets like that, utilize certain knowledge domain ontologies. So they can describe, for example, a Polkadot ontology, a Web3 ontology, or a gaming ontology. And this gives really schema and additional contents to it, but also enables certain very useful reasoning capabilities. In this case, what you see here is actually what I'll show you now on the demo. What you can do is you can do trusted semantic search on top of such knowledge assets. So these knowledge assets form a graph. Let's say I am the Web3 Foundation, for example. I can create knowledge assets about Polkadot, and I'll show you a demo on exactly that. Imagine I'm the Web3 Foundation. And I can actually do a chatbot-like interface, which doesn't involve any generative component. It involves just extractive search, essentially. So what you'll see in a second, which is demo time, is exactly that. So I just need to bring over another window. And there it is. All right, so this is, like I said, this is a demo interface. So it's in my local host, as you can see it. What was going to happen here, I'm going to type in, let's say I can type in what is Polkadot. And I hope I typed it well, and let's see if it works. Yeah, so what happened here is I actually get an answer. Polkadot is the first fully sharded blockchain, et cetera, et cetera. You guys know what Polkadot is, right? But what I also get is this group of source knowledge assets where this comes from. I can zoom in a little bit, I'll show you. But essentially, you see here this URL that I mentioned. So this is this uniform asset locator that's essentially a combination of a DID. So you might notice this looks like a contract address because it is, and the token ID because it is. But also, apart from that, there's also a state hash. I'll show you in a second. This answer, again, wasn't generated. So it's not AI, coming up with its own thing and saying who knows what. This was literally taken from a knowledge asset and presented here. And if I click here, I'm actually going to load a testnet OriginTrail DKG Explorer. So this is not a blockchain explorer. This is an actual knowledge graph explorer. So it's something you probably haven't seen before because it's actually not even out yet. This is in a staging environment. And essentially here we can see the knowledge asset. So the knowledge asset is, like I said, this graph. I can zoom in a bit. And it shows connections to other knowledge assets. So these hexagons, this is the symbol for the knowledge asset we picked because the circles are your standard knowledge graph entity symbols. So what we can see here is basically we can see this information. We can also see it here in basically exact text form. And what this looks like under the hood is either you can observe it as JSON LD. JSON LD is this graph form of JSON, or this RDF form, which is this standardized W3C format for graph data. So what did I do here? So, OK, going back. So not to go, like I said, too deep into all of the components. Here it is. So you can see different knowledge assets connected together. And I can, for example, pick, I don't know, I can click on this other one, and it gets resolved, it gets loaded. So I'm a little missing out a little bit here. But anyhow, long story short is this information is actually replicated across the DKG. So it's not something I'm loading from like a centralized server or something. This is actually similar to, let's say, IPFS, but much more powerful because it actually connects everything into a graph. So you can also, outside of doing something like this, which is more like your block explorer type of thing, you can also run graph queries on it. So you can use it as a fully fledged decentralized graph database. Point being is if you create your knowledge assets, it has all of this provenance involved. It has all of the information connected, and it's all verifiable, including, and this should also work, let me see, including all of the capabilities of the NFT that is not loaded here on Subscan for some reason, because it's loading the mainnet Parachain. So I guess this link doesn't work for us for the testnet. But anyhow, you can trust me on my word on it. So I'm going to go bring back the presentation just to finish it off. I have 4 minutes from what I see, which is just enough. All right, so that was a quick demo. Again, the search happened on the graph. Essentially, it used the semantics of the graph. It used these embeddings of graph elements to find the most semantically close entity to the question. I could have typed in other questions, able to find maybe different knowledge assets. And then from that moment on, you can actually, you can basically check the source of this information, verify the integrity, and verify the whole information trail, which is basically the building blocks for building trusted AI-based applications that do not hallucinate. We can route all of the information into the blockchain and utilize the graph to create such search and query mechanisms. The cool thing about this, when we start creating more and more of these knowledge assets, and by the way, right now on OriginTrail, there's around 300,000 knowledge assets on this version 6, which we relatively recently launched. The network effect can very quickly kick in. It's not just network effects of communities, it's also network effects on the graph level. And I'm sure you guys have heard of network effects before. If you haven't, this is the visual representation of it, which is actually called the Metcalfe's law. Metcalfe's law says that the value of a network, of knowledge network, of telephone network, is proportional to the square of the number of participants of that network, so n squared. And in many ways, that's exactly what Web 2 was exploiting. Facebook, Google, and Netflix, like I said, they all have knowledge graphs under the hood, and all of the information we give them, doing searches, posting things on social media, they actually aggregate in that graph and generate an enormous amount of value. And actually, the guy who formulated this law proved that it works on Facebook. And this guy's name is Bob Metcalfe. He's actually an advisor to OriginTrail, long-time advisor, and this is what he had to say. By the way, he's famous for also inventing the Ethernet. So if you ever heard of, the old school first computer network, he was the one to create it and basically was an internet pioneer. So he's very excited about OriginTrail and decentralized knowledge graphs for their ability to infuse trust into artificial intelligence. All right, so how can you participate? We actually just recently launched some funny name, right? ChatDKG framework with the ability to create such interfaces. Like I said, this was just a demo, so this is not a production app or something. You can build probably many more better apps for your particular use cases. And we're actually giving out a grant. So the track token, which is the token behind the DKG network, 1 million of those tokens are given out for projects that build according to certain criteria, such as open source, obviously solving a meaningful problem. And the idea is that basically it enables better AI-based interfaces, which we can build together for utilizing knowledge assets on the DKG. If you scan that code, it will open up the website, which is really a GitHub repo, which explains all of it. And you can also join our Discord. There's quite a vibrant community of builders there discussing what can be built with such solutions. So would love to see you guys there if you're interested, if that sounds like your cup of tea, or if you just want to try out building certain things with AI on top of trusted knowledge. So that should be my last slide. I'll just finish with a statement made by late co-founder of Intel: knowledge is power, knowledge share is power multiplied. So come on over, join us in Discord, and let's share some knowledge and build some cool stuff together. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Branimir. Are you going to give away the swag right away, or?
Yes. Who wants
Because we're
swag?
setting up the stage for the next panel, where Branimir is gonna
whoever wants to come in the front row, I'm just gonna give you a bunch of swag.
Come on, guys, jump in, jump in. Swag is always welcome.